If ancient philosophers carried journals with them, what kind of journal would Plato have kept? Hey, welcome to ParkNotes. I'm Parker Settecase. I'm a philosopher and theologian, and this is a channel where I help you study, think, and read more deeply. In this video, I'm going to argue that Plato would have kept a traveler-style journal with 3 notebooks inside, one representing each of the parts of his tripartite soul. Now, if you don't know what a tripartite soul is, don't worry about it. I'm going to explain it in detail in the rest of this video, so stay tuned for that. And then after we cover Plato's 3 parts of the soul, I'll show you how you can keep a traveler's journal in the way that Plato likely would have if they had notebooks back in Plato's day. So watch the full video. You'll get an introduction to Plato's theory of the soul. You'll get a new way to keep a traveler's style journal, and you'll get to nerd out with me along the way. This video is sponsored by ZocDoc, but more on that later. Let's jump in with Plato's tripartite soul. Okay, so let's dive in with a little bit on Plato's psychology, his theory of the soul. It's a tripartite psychology. Plato believed that there were 3 parts to the human soul. Now, I know that today psychology is about mental disorders and stuff like that, but the original Greek word was psyche, which meant soul. So psychology is a study of souls. Whether you were a dualist about souls like Plato was, believing that you are essentially your soul and that your personhood is grounded in your soul and it can survive the death of your body, or whether you were a hylomorphist about the soul, thinking that maybe the intellect is immaterial or something like that, but your personhood is grounded in your form and matter composite. Now, those aren't the only 2 ancient philosophies of the soul. There were also people like the Stoics who believed that your soul is corporeal, that there's nothing more than just your physical body, and yet the word soul was still in their philosophical vocabulary. So all that to say, Plato, in the ancient view of psychology, was a psychologist. He's someone who thought a lot about the nature of the soul. And like we've already said, he believed that the soul was comprised of 3 parts: a rational part, a spirited part, and an appetitive part. Now, each part is associated with different drives, different parts of the body, different loves, virtues, and vices. So the rational part of the soul is associated with the logic drive. It's associated with the brain, obviously. The rational part of the soul loves truth and wisdom. The virtue associated with the rational part is wisdom itself. And then the vice associated with the rational part is pride or sloth. The spirited part of the soul is associated with the emotion as drive. It's associated with the heart in the body. The spirited part loves honor and victory. The virtue is courage. The vice is anger and envy. And then we have the appetitive part of the soul. This is associated with the drive of desire. It's associated with the belly or the genitals, because the appetitive part of the soul loves pleasure. And the virtue associated with the appetitive part of the soul is moderation, which totally makes sense considering that it loves pleasure. And then the vice would be greed. So Plato didn't just come up with his tripartite theory of the soul out of thin air, but he actually uses the law of non-contradiction in order to discover that there's 3 parts of the soul. The law of non-contradiction is the basic fundamental law of logic. It says that something can't both be and not be in the same regard, in the same respect, at the same exact time. So something can't both exist and not exist in the same way at the same time. So Plato uses the law of non-contradiction to generate these 3 parts of the soul by saying, hey, there are times when I have a desire for something, but my mind is telling me, no, don't give in to that desire. There are other times when my desire is telling me to run and flee, but then I have this spirited part of myself that says, no, be brave and courageous. Don't give in to that desire. So there are times when our reason is keeping us from giving in to our desires or is helping shape our courageous action. There are other times when our hearts or when our emotions are in conflict with our desires or with what we know according to our reason. And so all these things can't be true of the soul at the same time in the same respect if the soul is just one thing. But if the soul is comprised of 3 parts, then it makes sense. We can start attributing different things to different parts of the soul. Okay, so those are the 3 parts of Plato's soul: the rational, the spirited, and the appetitive part. And while he's given us these 3 parts of the soul, which look like they're equals, they should not be regarded equally according to Plato. Plato gives us an analogy for how we should think about the interaction between the 3 parts of the soul. The analogy is of a charioteer and 2 horses pulling the chariot. So together, the chariot and 2 horses, that is the human psyche, the human soul. But the charioteer, the person who is driving the chariot, who is leading where things should go, that's reason. The appetitive part of the soul is represented as a black horse. I think maybe it's like volition. I think maybe the 3 parts correspond to reason, volition, and affections, but that may not be quite right. This is just how I'm thinking about it. The black horse is the appetitive part, and that's probably the wildest one that's pulling off in one direction, and reason has to keep the reins tight in order for the appetite and the spirited horse to work together. Now, the spirited horse or the affections, this is a white horse. So you have a charioteer, you have a black horse, and you have a white horse. Reason is in charge. Reason ought to be controlling the appetite and controlling the spirited part of the psyche. When those three things are not in the proper order, when they are disordered, the human person will experience that disorder and the chaos that ensues. So part of living the good life, part of living the examined life, the philosophical life is having your reason rule over your appetite and your spirited parts of your soul. Now, like I said, there are other ancient philosophical conceptions of the soul, different ancient psychologies, but Plato's trichotomist view was massively influential. But it wasn't only influential for ancient philosophers, it was also influential for ancient doctors like Hippocrates and Galen. So I promise I'm going to get to the notebook, but I just discovered this stuff, so I have to share it with you. It's super exciting. There's this ancient view of health and medicine and even personality types that goes all the way back through ancient Egypt, but finds its way up through Western medicine through folks like Hippocrates, who is the father of modern medicine. The view is called Humorism, and it puts forth 4 major humors, and these humors will determine your personality, and having them in check will determine your health. So there's the sanguine humor, which is associated with the blood and the heart. There's the phlegmatic humor, which is associated with phlegm and the brain. There's the caloric humor, which is associated with yellow bile and the liver. And there's the melancholic humor, which we still use today. We still say someone's feeling melancholy. This is associated with black bile and the spleen. So the proper blending of the 4 humors gives you eucrasia, which is good health. So Hippocrates didn't invent this, but he did describe it. He did try to start categorizing the 4 humors and what they're associated with. And then came along this guy named Galen, who was a Roman and Greek physician. And Galen started mixing the 4 humors with the 3 parts of Plato's soul in order to have a whole philosophy of the soul and of the body. And then together you have a unified picture of how to have a happy and healthy soul and body. Now, another little side note here, the 4 humors actually correspond to the 4 tempers of Lumen. If you're watching Severance right now, it's actually the reverse. The 4 tempers are based on the 4 humors of ancient medicine. So that's a really cool detail in Severance. Now, today, humorism is on the outs. Nobody really cares about the 4 humors. Doctors will not tell you about this today. And I think they're right. I think that the 4 humors are a misconception of the human body. But I do think that Galen was right in trying to address the soul and the body together to say, hey, look, if your soul's out of whack, it's going to mess with your body. If your body's out of whack, it's going to mess with your soul. And so you need your body to be healthy, and you need to have your soul properly ordered with reason in control of your emotions and your desires. Okay, so that's just a little bit about how Galen took Plato's tripartite soul, his philosophical psychology, and then he blended it with the 4 humors of ancient humorism in his own ancient medicine. Now, Galen was a legitimate genius, but you probably wouldn't want that dude giving you medical advice today. But then again, he's probably still wiser than some of the modern influencers that you guys are having diagnose you through your screens. If you're anything like me, and I know you are, then you found yourself stumbling down a social media rabbit hole full of questionable advice from so-called experts on all things health when you should have just made an appointment with a doctor. When's the last time you saw a specific doctor? I know I'd rather research stuff on my own and self-diagnose so I can put off visits until something absolutely crazy happens. But when my daughter was born, I decided I was long overdue for a physical, so I went in and found out I have celiac disease, and that I've been having autoimmune reactions to gluten for years. I saw a specialist, and now a lot of my joint pain and other symptoms have largely subsided. So stop putting it off and check out ZocDoc today. ZocDoc is a website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care to skin care, and much more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, who are located nearby, who are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and who are highly rated by verified patients. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, usually within 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. So stop putting off those appointments. Check out ZocDoc.com/ParkNotes and find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. Okay, so big thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video. Now let me finally get into the Tripartite notebook system for catching all of your thoughts and ideas and plans, which I think that Plato would totally approve of. So this is a traveler's style notebook. It's a Paper Republic. That is the leather cover. And then all of these notebooks are also Paper Republic. And this is a catch-all system. So I'm trying to catch all of the details of my life. I'm trying to catch all of my ideas. I'm trying to catch all of my to-dos. And I'm trying to catch all of my motivational quotes that will inspire me to do what I want to do. This is a collection of everything I need and want to remember. It is a catch-all system. I'm not going to put all of the details that I need into the catch-all. This is just a first stop. This is so I make sure I'm not forgetting what I need to remember. And then later I can move my ideas out to a different notebook or tasks to my calendar or whatever the case. So again, for Plato, we have a rational, a spirited, and an appetitive part of our soul. And I have a notebook corresponding to each one of those parts in my catch-all system. The first notebook is for thoughts or my ideas. This is for the rational part of my soul. This is where I'm collecting my ideas. I actually really like compartmentalizing these. For years, I've kept one notebook as my catch-all, and then I just rifle through it looking for to-dos, looking for ideas, blah, blah, blah. But this is nice to compartmentalize my ideas just into one notebook. So here in the rational section of my catch-all system, I'm using a thicker notebook because I noticed that when I used one of these thinner ones, I was filling it up with ideas much more quickly. And that's because that's what I do. I study philosophy and theology, and I write blogs and make YouTube videos. I'm always thinking. That's part of what I do. That's who I want to be. So it makes sense that the reason portion of my catch-all system is a little bit thicker. So these are my ideas or thoughts from others that I want to add to my commonplace books and add my own thoughts to. That's all going in the rational portion of my catch-all. Next up, I have the appetitive part. This was a rational part, so see a lot of my ideas in here. But then, like I said, I was filling it up too much. And so I moved it over to my appetitive part. This is going to help me keep track of my life and my desires. So in here, I'm going to have to-do lists, and this is going to function more like a bullet journal to help me keep track of my life. I'm going to have my TBR, to be read list. I'm going to have some of my wants. I'm going to have open projects, all the life management type stuff. I'm associating all of those things with the appetitive part of my life. These are things that must be managed in order for me to live well. These are things that must get done. And then lastly, I'm keeping a Zibaldone at the end. Zibaldone is like a commonplace book, but it's just a collection of quotations without any ordering or structure or anything like that. It's just a collection of quotations, and I'm associating this with the spirited part of the soul because these are quotations that I use to motivate myself. Not just to motivate myself to get up out of bed or to exercise or anything like that, but motivate me to be the kind of person that I want to be. So I have quotes like J.R.R. Tolkien's quote from a letter on the intro to the Silmarillion. Reward on earth is more dangerous for men than punishment. I don't know if I wholly agree with that, but it's thought-provoking, and it reminds me not to just chase rewards, because chasing rewards isn't always the best thing for you. I also have some of my own aphorisms that I'm including in here, and then a bunch of proverbs. So that's the spirited part of my catch-all. When I find a good quote, I'm just throwing it in here, and then I'll move it to the appropriate commonplace book later. I have the appetitive part of my catch-all system here. This is going to help me plan my days. This is going to be like a bullet journal. And then I have the rational part of my catch-all. This is where I catch my ideas and the ideas of others that I want to comment on or argue against or whatever. Those are going in my rational portion of my catch-all system. So there you go. I think if Plato would have kept a journal, he would have kept something like this that is doing justice to his tripartite view of the human soul. Now, I should mention that Plato would not have kept a journal like this because this kind of journal did not exist when he was around. He would have written on a vellum scroll or maybe a papyrus scroll or something like that. But the modern codex, the book that opens in the middle, wasn't invented until, I don't know, the 3rd century or something like that, when Christians wanted to have the Bible more readily available and easy to read, but those codexes would have also been made of vellum or some kind of animal skin because paper was invented over in China, and then the codex and the Chinese paper met in Afghanistan, and then paper books started coming about. And then the paper codex made its way from Afghanistan over to Italy during the Renaissance when people started keeping paper notebooks. So all that to acknowledge, yes, I know Plato would not have kept this style of notebook, but if he had it available to him, he may have kept a tripartite notebook in order to help him have a properly ordered soul. All right, so that's it. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit about Plato and maybe some stuff about humorism, but most importantly, hopefully you have a new way to keep a traveler's journal now, a way that is practical for helping you manage your own life and properly order your own tripartite soul. If you guys made it this far into the video, then you're awesome. Leave me a thinking emoji in the comments so I know who the real ones are. And then I want to hear from you. If you've kept one of these traveler style notebooks in the past, how have you used the notebooks inside? How many did you use? And what do you use them for? I always love learning new stuff from you guys right here in the comments. If you like this video, then go ahead and leave me a like and make sure you subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any future videos where I shoehorn in a bunch of philosophical concepts into a video about notebooks. That's going to do it for now. I'll catch you guys next time.